Welcome to the House of Horrors podcast, where each week we dissect problems real estate investors have faced, how they navigated it, and of course what you can do to avoid ending up in their shoes. Y'all, this week I am excited to have my friend Frankie Dulli on the podcast. I've known Frankie for a few years now. We met at a local real estate investing group, hit it off, and he's a cool guy. He's a go-getter, and he's kind of gone from wearing like the hat he was wearing when I met him, which was he was working as for a big wholesaling company, to now being a full-time real estate investor of his own. Since I've met him, he's gotten married, he's got the baby, he's left his W-2 job, and he's purchased 16 properties using the BRRRR method and creative financing. Frankie's been featured on some bigger name podcasts than this little one here, like the Rich Dad Real Estate Show. And he also has a podcast of his own, a Frankie Dulli Show, which is a ton of fun. He's super engaging. If you are looking to add another real estate podcast to your mix, definitely check out his podcast. Thanks for joining me, Frankie.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, Bonnie. And it's always fun getting called a go-getter from you, from the person who has 3 kids, 100 properties, is also reading 52 business books this month possibly, but this year. Like how you do it all makes me like turn around sometimes and be like, yeah, I have a lot more time on my hands. So thank you for that introduction. And I am thrilled to be on the House of Horrors podcast. This is a very, very fun podcast, so I'm excited to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, and I always love getting to have people on the podcast who I know have, even if they haven't been investing for like 15 years, like they've seen some stuff. Yes. And you've definitely seen some stuff, which, for better or for worse, right? And I'm really excited to dive into your particular horror story, because it kind of shows the lifespan of, say, a funky tenant. We'll put it that way. Yes. From start to finish. And so start us off, you get this property through a BRRRR. Where was this like in your property lineup? Was this like on the earlier end of your portfolio building towards,
like you mentioned, I've been in real estate now it's been probably about like 4 years. I've been wholesaling for the first 3 with kind of like a big wholesale outfit. It was my corporate company. And then I left that in June of 2024 and started buying full time with my partner, Steve. And this was actually our very first deal together. So it was listed on the market for $100,000, which was way overpriced. We ended up going out, looking at it. We ended up getting it under contract after negotiations for $58,000. And we bought it, and we were like super ecstatic about it. And we bought it with the thought of like, this is going to be a easy cosmetic reno, which at first it looked like it was. But to answer your question, it was our very first deal together. It wasn't our first deal in general, but it was our first deal together.
That's of course the way it works out, right?
Yeah.
And so tell me how that deal started off.
Yeah, so everything went great. Like on paper, from a BRRRR perspective, it was fantastic. We bought it for 58. We put 30 G's into it, so we were all in. Our total loan amount at the end of all of it was like $88,000. We ended up getting an appraisal at 155. We walked away with $21,000. And we learned a ton. We did some really good things there, but where we failed is we did not screen this tenant. And that's really where it starts, right? So like, we're like, cool, we got the reno done. We got to get the refi. We got to cash out. It's summer. We have plans. He's going to Miami. We got a lot of things we want going on. And then we're like, we got to get a tenant in here. And my boy, Steve, who I love to death, is like, I got this lady. She came to look at one of my other houses. She didn't get it. She was really upset she didn't get it. I think it could be a great fit for her. I'm like, awesome. Like, bring her out. Let's say we go out there, we meet her. And it's those signs from the very beginning, right? Like, she's like, I'm a great tenant. Like, I'm going to keep it clean. All this, she's saying all the things that you want to hear. And we were asking $1,650 for the property, and she was going to give us $1,650 in rent. And we were like, cool, like, give us your current landlord's number. Like, we want to call him. She was paying $1,800 at her current place. We give the guy a call, and he's like, she's fantastic. She's awesome. Great tenant. And that's all we did. That's literally like all we did. We did not screen her. We went off the gut check and the prior landlord. And when you look back at it, what a disaster. Because obviously this guy's going to say that, right? He's not going to be like, yeah, she's a mess. You don't want her as a tenant. He wants her out. He wants to sell his place. So he
Yeah,
wanted
he's
her.
trying to pass her
And
off.
yeah, and we were at the point where we were just like, we want to hit the refi button. We need the tenant in there for to get the DSCR loan. So like we are going to pull the trigger, and that was the mistake.
And so there was like no credit check, no background check, none of that kind of stuff
None of that
happened.
stuff. Yeah. Which listen, now I look back at myself and I'm like, you're an idiot. Mistake, mistake, mistake. And we've come a long way. But it was one of those that Steve and I will never forget.
But sometimes it's like a good thing, I think, when it's like something where it's like so glaring at you where you're like, this was the hole, all I need to do is fix it. Because sometimes there's issues and you're like, I really don't know what I could have done differently. Like here, it's almost better when you're like, there's the solution out there. I just need to implement it.
100%. Yeah, yeah. And now we use like a property management. We use Door Loop. Like we run all of our tenants through there. So like significant leaps and bounds since this. I think we just got a little trigger happy. We were definitely setting the market with our market rent, and we were like, ooh, this person's willing to give it. Like she's got the money for first months in security. Like we're taking it.
Yeah. And then what happened after that?
Yeah, so she goes in there, and she has a disabled mother who she takes care of, and that's how she makes her income. So for us, we're like, all right, that's like relatively stable. And then she's got like a few kids, and we get a call probably like a week after she moved in, and she's like, yeah, we're getting water in the basement. And like, you know, like Bonnie, we live in the same area. Like water in the basement's not an uncommon thing. Like, you know, a lot of my houses get water just the way that they were built. But she sends like a picture of like this pipe. And I'm like, I don't know, man, like this is looking a little weird. So we send our plumber out there, and it turns out that it's a backup in the main sewer line. And we're not sure like how significant this is going to be. So we call a well-known plumbing company out there. I'm going to spare their name because I have sincere beef with them at this point, and I don't want to get into that necessarily. But they pretty much tell us that the whole main sewer line is cracked, and we need to get it replaced. Well, at this point of kind of getting to this knowledge, the tenant is still just going to the bathroom and doing all of this stuff. And there's like significant like sewage backing up in the basement. And we find out that like they need to replace this main line. So we start getting the ball rolling, but there's just like snag after snag happening. Like there's permitting issues, which shouldn't have even been a problem because this would be considered an emergency. But then there's the problem with the pipe being under the porch, and we need to remove the porch steps, and people need to come out there and mark where the line is because nobody marked it. Long and behold, this is now taking weeks. And we are telling our tenant, we want to put you in a hotel. Like, because at this point, it has become a disaster. The basement is filling with sewage. It's just disgusting. It's an actual like bleep show, if you know what I'm saying. And I was like, yo, we got to get you guys in a hotel. And the tenant's just like, my mom's disabled, like we can't move. And I'm like, well, my only other option is to put a porta potty in your guy's backyard. Like, is that really what you want? And they were like, yeah, we'll take the porta potty. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm calling up a porta potty company. They're delivering it. The porta potty's not fitting through the back alleyway. I'm getting into arguments with the porta potty company. Lo and behold, they leave it literally like on the side of the road. And me and Steve drive out there. We take the porta potty, we bring it into the yard. Having said all of that, the tenants are using the porta potty, but the mom's disabled. She's not. So she's still going to the bathroom. And to make like a long story short, eventually we get the porch done. We fix that whole pipeline and everything is good to go. But as this is going on, obviously it's not a good look. So we're like prorating rent and we're, you know, making adjustments. And then she tells me that her mom ends up in the hospital and she doesn't even have money to pay rent. And it just becomes an absolute disaster. But lo and behold, the pipe ends up getting fixed. We have to send out that plumbing company to do remediation on the basement to clear it all out, which we thought insurance was covering. Lo and behold, they stick us with an $18,000 bill, which is what I'm in like fighting with right now. But yeah, it's a total bleep show. That's exactly how it went.
So how long did this go from like your first notification from the tenant to finally fixing the sewer line?
About 3 weeks.
Ugh.
Yeah. Disaster. Absolutely.
And is that why you think the insurance company is denying the claim? Have they given you a basis for the denial?
Yeah, so they said that they're denying it because the backup occurred outside of the house. So like it came from like the backup in the main line, which is in the street, they were saying that anything that comes from outside of the house is not considered like their thing. So like we knew the main line replacement wasn't covered. We knew that. So we paid for the main line, which you talk about $21,000 that we got on this BRRRR, goodbye, it's gone. And then but we were under the impression after speaking with this plumbing company that they had communicated with the insurance company and got the approval that we would be covered for the remediation in the basement to clean all that up. So we said, cool, do it. And then on top of that, they came out, cleaned it one time. And because that same plumbing company didn't fix the pipe within a good amount of time from when they cleaned it, they needed to come out a second time. So they end up trying to stick the insurance company with an $18,000 bill. The insurance company backs out and says, we're not covering that because it came from outside of the house. And now they're sticking it to us.
Ugh.
Yeah, which I'm like in talks with their credit person or whatever the guy's name is.
Yeah. And did you find out what caused the crack in the first place? Like, do you think this tenant did something, like they were flushing something down the toilet, or do you think it was something that was maybe just there and...
Yeah, I think it was just there because these houses are old and like these pipes are really old. So like the house was built in 1920. So like it doesn't surprise me necessarily that it's decaying. And there was a good like again, we pull learning experiences from this. Like now on every property that we go into, like, we're doing, especially the ones that have been sitting vacant for a while, we're doing sewer cams on them just to make sure, you know what I mean? So there's definitely been value pulled from this disaster. But yeah, I think it was just one of those situations where, we didn't think like, oh, let's flush the toilet like 50 times before we move the tenant in to like make sure like nothing's backing up. It just ended up happening once they moved in there.
Yeah, I feel like sewer is one of those things, like the first time you miss it and it bites you in the butt, you will never skip that in due diligence again. I always am telling my clients to do it, and I get it. It's a few $100 extra usually to do that, especially depending on the length of the sewer line. But it's one of those things that like insurance isn't going to cover if it's broken. It's a lot easier negotiating it out with the seller if there is an issue. And it can be just as, if not more expensive than like replacing an HVAC system, or
for sure.
It could be up there with a roof even, just due to the amount of permitting, digging, licensed plumber, like all of that stuff really, really adds up, even if it's something that could ultimately be done when the work is done in probably like a day or so. Yeah,
100%. And that's like what we realized too. And like, it's one of those things where it killed us, not even in the sense of the position that it put the tenant in, not even in the sense of that, like it crushed the money that we made on the BRRRR. It was more so in the sense of like, now that whole relationship of, and this is like what we really pride ourselves on. Like we want to provide the best quality housing. So like we have a tenant that moves in there and then that happens. It's like, it's not really a good look on us. You know what I mean? To say we're providing great housing, like you flush a toilet, it's coming back into the house. So it's just one of those things where it's been definitely a learning experience and something that you're avoiding like the plague moving forward for sure.
I bet. So how has that relationship with that particular tenant progressed?
Yeah, it's an absolute mess. I mean, there's no like way to describe it. Like, so that all happened. And again, like for the situation, she was relatively graceful. And I think that's why I'm a little bit more lenient with this tenant, or at least I've tried to be, because like, that's not a great first, impression. It's not a great start to the relationship. But once that was all cleared up, we had a couple months go by where she just wasn't paying the rent. And there wasn't really like an excuse for it, or I shouldn't necessarily say there was an excuse. There was lots of excuses, but it was more just like, it's not like there were things going on in the house that like we should be prorating or anything along those lines. It was just straight up like that whole situation was remediated. It's done. The bandage has been put on and, it's healed. And now it's just stop of paying. And she was pretty much saying that her mom was in the hospital, and because she gets paid when she takes care of her mom, because she was in the hospital, she wasn't getting paid. So long and behold, she was behind 2 months. She was behind $3,400. On top of that, a bunch of trash started piling up on the porch. And it was just like a mess. Like we drive past the block and like the house is a mess. There's, the Ninja Turtle curtains in the windows. Like it just went from like kind of like a rocky start to now this is just like blatantly bad. And it got to the point where I was like, I got to file an eviction. Like I have no choice now. Like you're costing us. We're we've paid 2 months of the mortgage. We are owed $3,400. I have no choice. So I filed for an eviction, and I've done a bunch of steps before that, Bonnie. Like I tried to put a payment plan in place. And I had approval on the payment plan. I've told her, hey, listen, if you miss a payment on the payment plan, it triggers an eviction. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And she agreed to that. She missed periods on the payment plan. She missed every period on the payment plan, quite frankly. And then I even posted a notice on the door, a pay or vacate notice, giving her 5 days to pay even just half of that $3,400 to avoid eviction. And she totally snuffed it, like just didn't even reply to it. So I went into courts and I filed for an eviction. And a couple weeks later, I got the eviction date. And I went in there, and to my surprise, she showed up. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, you got to be kidding me. So she's like trying to like approach me in court before we go up. And I'm like kind of stiff arming her, like I'm having no part of it. Because I don't want to hear like a sob story right now. Like at the end of the day, like I don't want to be here. This was the last place I wanted to be. And you forced my hand to get to this point. So we both walk up in front of the judge. And the judge is like, hey, like, what do you have? I'm like, I got a lease. I got a pay or vacate notice copy that I posted on her door. I have printed out text message conversations of me giving her chance after chance on like what to pay and all that stuff. And I hand it all to the judge and she gives it to her and she's like, does all of this look valid? And she's like, yeah. She's like, all right, so Frankie, like, say your piece. And I was like, listen, like, she's a great person. This is nothing against who she is as a person, anything along those lines. She owes us $3,400 in rent. I tried to put her on payment plans, as you could see. I put a pay or vacate notice. It's at this point, it's a lack of communication. She's not even communicating with me half the time. And I run a business. I need to, unfortunately, have her out of this house so I could re-renovate it and get it rented out so that my business could survive. And the judge like looked to the tenant and was like, cool, you have anything to add? And I kid you not, her response was just like, I had promises made to me. Those promises fell through. And because of those promises falling through, I couldn't keep my promise with Frankie. And I'm just like, what are we doing here? So long behold,
it sounds like something from like, I don't know, The Sopranos or something.
100%. I mean, that's basically my life. I feel like a lot of times, and it's not just my Italian heritage. Like, you know, it just kind of happens. I feel like Tony Soprano with all the problems that I deal with on a daily basis. But the judge pretty much ruled. She was like, this lease is a yearly lease, right? I was like, yes. She was like, if it's a yearly lease, you have to give them the option to pay to stay. So right. She had the option, right? And I'm sure you're familiar with this. She had 10 days to either, appeal it, or on the 11th day, if she doesn't pay, I can go in and schedule the lockout date with the sheriff.
Right.
So on the 10th day, she texts me and is like, hey, I could pay $1,800 today and I could pay $1,600 on Friday. And keep in mind, like for me, it's better if she pays because she wrecked that house. And I know that I'm going to have to go in there and put $20,000 into this just to get it back up so that like I could get it re-rented. So in my opinion, like I would prefer, especially as me and my boy are scaling a portfolio, you know, and we're working on a bunch of other renovations, I would prefer to just have her be a good paying tenant if I could get to that point. So I was like, hey, if you pay $1,800 today and you pay $1,600 on Friday, I won't schedule a lockout date. And she did that. And I was kind of like, cool, maybe we will start anew. And at this point also, she's texting me, asking me for renovations at the house. And I'm sending her contractor there because I don't want to give her any excuse to be able to like go to the judge and be like, he's not doing these repairs and that's why I'm not paying. So we're sending her contractor in there, all that stuff she pays. And long and behold, a couple months have gone by. We're not getting rent, right? So, and that's still been a little bit of an issue. She's like made sporadic payments, but she's trying to catch up. And this is really where it's come to a head now. She had texted me, I'm so sorry, my tenant next door. So we own, you know, a few of these single families right next to each other. My tenant next door texted my property manager and she goes, hey, I'm smelling like significant weed coming from the house. And she was like, this is a problem because if my parole officer comes to the house, he might lock me up for smelling like weed. And I'm like, this is like literally like what a lifestyle I'm living, right? I got one tenant who's not paying, who's smoking weed, and the one next to it's on parole. It's a minor parole situation, right? It's nothing too crazy. But she's a good, believe me, she's one of my best tenants. I'm not going to lie. But she says this, and at this point now I've kind of like had enough. And I was just like, hey, listen, to the tenant, I texted her. I was like, you got trash all over the front. My tenant next door is saying that it's smelling like weed. And on top of that, like you're behind on rent. If all of these aren't fixed within 24 hours, I need to evict you. And I kid you not, Bonnie, her response was, I got kidnapped. That's what she said to me. And I just replied, thank you. That was it.
I have to say that is an absolute first. I have never heard of that excuse. Like, was the way it was written, like she was still kidnapped, like she was out of
Yeah,
commission still.
pretty much. She texted me and was like, because I had texted her like a couple days before that, and of course she didn't answer. And she had texted me and pretty much like replied a little bit to what I said prior, where she was like going to talk to her sons about like helping with the payment for this month. And then she was like, I'm sorry for my delay. Like, I got kidnapped. I should be back like later today and we'll get you an update. And I was just like, and it's funny because I had so much stuff like going on that day, and like all the excuses at this point, like I'm numb to all of her excuses, that I was just like, thank you. Like that was my reply. I was like, I'm not even getting involved with this. Like, what do you expect from me? Like, do you expect me to be like, where are you? I'll send my guys. Like they'll come get you. Like what's
Call the
going on
police.
here? It's just a disaster.
Ma'am, if your phone is working, I suggest you call the police.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And then who's smoking the weed? Was it her mom? Was it her children?
She's got like a couple like older kids in the house, and I think they're the ones that are lighting it up for sure. For sure.
So where does things stand right now with this? Because this is an ongoing thing. This is a story that has not come to a conclusion quite yet, has it?
It has not. No. So like the way that I envision this happening is like, she had texted my property manager a couple days ago and said that she was, at the time of this recording, she said that she was going to make a payment today. Now, I am at the point where it's affecting the tenant next door, and she's a great tenant, and I want her to stay long term, that I can't keep having that. And I actually drove past the house yesterday, and I saw that the porch was cleaned up. So like, she seems like she's making some sort of effort. But it's hard because like I told you, like I don't necessarily want to have a vacant house that I now need to send my crews out to get renovated while they're already working on 3 renovations right now. So like it's kind of like, it's a little bit of a catch-22, because if I leave her in there and she makes some payments, at least like I'm kind of breaking even with it. But if at the same time I need to have a precedent, and the precedent is I provide housing, you pay rent, and you follow the rules and regulations. And I need to have that, I think. And as attorney, you'll probably attest to that, like with fair housing and all that stuff. I need to treat all my tenants equally. Like at the end of the day, like this is what it is. This is the lease that they signed. This is what they agreed to. I make an agreement that I'll provide the housing, and that's kind of where it stands. So I think my next plan is to take her back to court. And regardless of if she pays or not, to evict based off the fact of smoking in the house and trash all over the porch. That's probably my go-to.
Yeah. So this is PA, right? Like, is her lease coming to an end? Like, just not renew her?
Yeah, she's about like 3/4 through the lease right now.
Okay, so it's probably not worth waiting for that.
Yeah. And again, it's really the tenant next door. Like if it wasn't the tenant next door, it's not killing cash flow by one property not performing. It's more so at this point the fact that I don't want to disrupt the other tenant because she's a good paying tenant and we make a good amount of cash flow on that house, that I don't want to have a turnover there sooner than I need to.
Yeah, I get that. There's definitely been instances where you've kind of got like a pain in the neck tenant and you've got a great tenant.
Yeah.
And you have to do what you can, being fair and obviously within the law, but to make it clear to that good tenant that you see them, you hear what's going on, and you're doing whatever you can in their power to make sure that their experience and, their life is not 100%. Being ruined by their neighbor.
Yes.
And, whether that's, in your case, whether you have, multiple properties next to each other or a multifamily property where there's no shared common areas, that those things can be really, really important.
Yeah. Yeah, and she's great, and she knows that, and she loves like the service that we provide and stuff. And that's like I said, we want to provide the best quality housing, and instances like this, they continue to happen. But we do pride ourselves on service, and like anytime anything in the house needs repair, we got somebody in there within 24 hours. And like that tenant knows that. She's more so, the biggest concern was the weed, just because she's on parole. So
yeah, no, and that's a really serious concern to have.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be a really hard thing to explain.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think, kudos to her for saying something to you and being upfront with that
Yeah.
concern. So takeaways, top level takeaways from this horror story. What would you say they are?
Yeah, I think when it comes to the renovation aspect, being if especially for being vacant for a couple years, which this house was, get the sewer scopes, like just do the whole 9 yards on it, right? Because everything else was great, but that one thing destroyed the BRRRR, destroyed the profits on the BRRRR. Number two is screen thoroughly, right? And even still, like it's kind of funny because her income might have came back, like her credit may have came back, like those things still can. Like I've had instances where on paper, tenant looks amazing, and then they get in their house, and I'm getting calls from neighbors about problems from them, right? So it's like there's always going to be that, but still, at least we would have been able to say, hey, we put our ducks in a row, and like we could take from that. So that's definitely one. I would say takeaway from that is don't let the money on the table necessarily get in the way of like screening properly and doing the right thing. And then I think the other one is just being more, having a precedent and sticking to it. And like having, cool, rent's due on the 1st. If you don't pay by the 5th, it's a $50 late fee. If you don't pay by the 10th, eviction's triggered. Like having more so clear cut decision-making, plans and SOPs around that. I would say that's all been big takeaways.
Yeah, I think those are really important
Yeah.
for, all listeners to kind of keep in mind where, when sometimes you start getting like loosey-goosey with things, is it's like you kind of step your foot in it and make a bigger mess of things in the meantime or extend the pain.
Yeah. And I think even seeing that, like, too, it's kind of been a situation where, like, we're buying 2 to 3 a month. So, like, there's a lot of other moving parts in regards to acquisitions, in regards to renovations, that a small little thing like this kind of falls on the back burner. But as I look back on it, I'm like, look at what it snowballed into. Like, if I would have just been like more serious about it ahead of time and said like, cool, what is the SOP that we are installing in here? How are we going to execute on this? And just making sure that that actually happened, I wouldn't be in this situation, right? We might have evicted her a couple months ago, and now we might have had the place renovated again, and we might have a better tenant in there, right? Instead, now it's kind of just like this small wound that's continuing to bleed a little bit, and it's just never like fully healing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a great way to look at it. As you know, one of the things that I'm working towards this year is
Yes.
the 52 business books.
Yes,
And
yes,
so
yes.
I love to end with getting a book recommendation from my podcast guest. Is there a book, business, mindset, management, any of that type of stuff that you would recommend I and listeners, of course, should read?
Yes, I'm actually looking at my bookshelf right now.
I can
try to
tell.
make a decision here. Yeah. Let me see. I think I really liked Scaling Smart by Rich and Kathy Fedek, I think is maybe how you say their last name. I might be botching that.
I know what you're
But
talking about.
I went to BPCon in Cancun in October, and I picked up their book there, and I read it pretty much like on the plane ride back, and then like a couple weeks later, you're gonna finish it a lot faster than I did. But it's a small book, but I really liked that, and I think for me being in the place that it was, like I've been in real estate for a little while, but I was on the wholesale side of things, so I didn't know so much about like the operations that it takes to, acquire the houses, renovate them, rent them out, get them refinanced, doing that whole entire process. And then on top of that, I started bringing people in and started actually forming a team with my partner, Steve. And we grew really, really quickly, which was awesome. But we could tell that there was just it was just kind of like grace mixed with chaos, or I should say like goodness and chaos is maybe the better word to say it. There wasn't too much grace necessarily at all times. But that book helped me like really kind of like put into, perspective on like where my business is, where I want it to go, and how to really compartmentalize a lot of those things and put together more of like an organizational chart, and systems and processes, standard operating procedures, all of that stuff I really took from that book, which I think is great. I'm also reading Traction right now. I can't necessarily like say that's the one because I haven't finished it just yet, but that one seems to be really, really dominant. I've actually already started implementing that with my team. But Scaling Smart I thought was really, really good, especially for the position that I was in.
Yeah, you know what? It was funny. As you were describing Scaling Smart, I'm like, oh, that kind of sounds like Traction, but for
Yes.
like real estate.
Yeah, and that's literally like that is from everything I'm pulling from Traction. Like Scaling Smart, there's a lot of like reflection in there, but it is geared more towards real estate, which I really liked.
Cool. I love that. Thank you
Yeah.
for that recommendation.
Absolutely.
Well, Frankie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Listeners, if you want to get a hold of Frankie, I will link his social media, his website in the show notes. Frankie, so much. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Bonnie. It was a pleasure. Love being on here, and appreciate all you've done for me and my real estate investing as well. It means a lot.
Oh, thanks, Frankie.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the House of Horrors podcast. Make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcast player to make sure you don't miss out on any future episodes. Now, this lawyer's got to drop the fine print real quick. This podcast is educational and not intended to be legal, tax, or investing advice for you. Please speak with a local professional for specific advice unique to you and your situation.